Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Leader in You podcast. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Paulina, and I co host this podcast with Dr. Lola Gershfeld.
Hi, Paulina. So nice to be here with you.
Today, we have a very interesting discussion. Of course, as always, all of these discussions are so interesting, but we're bringing to you topics specific to emotional connection in the workplace, team dynamics, organizational behaviors, and what happens in the workplace during conflicts, and how we can use the emotionally connected process created by Dr. Lola to change the dynamics in the workplace, to enhance workplace flexibility, to change the mood so that people are actually happy being at work, thriving in their workplace environment, and enjoying every single moment of creating a better company as a team. And today we are talking about a short trailer slash film that came out about a month ago called Ripples. I actually have it right here on my phone. It's a film about incivility. Just to go over a little bit about what the film is about, it's a very short 2 minute, um, just showing how much incivility impacts teams in the workplace in a very negative way. So, we're going to talk about this and the importance of how you can shift the perspective and you can shift your approach and process when dealing with your team and with dealing with your boss, employees. You can also take it into your personal life and by using the emotionally connected process. Yay! We're stunned. The silence is because we're just stunned.
Actually, I saw this film at a Society of Industrial Organizational Psychology conference, and there was a panel discussion on workplace incivility. So they showed this film, and I thought it would be a great discussion to talk about because there were some things about this film that I thought it's great to point out. Do you want to share the summary of that film, Palina?
So, pretty much the film takes us through the beginning of a situation where an employee is working on a project. She makes a mistake on the project. Her boss is coming to her, and she turns to tell her boss that she's made a mistake. And then there is a pause right after the employee shares that she's made a mistake. And the boss proceeds to tell us, the viewers, what she is going to do to, I would say, punish the employee for making a mistake. And this is what categorizes under incivility. In that pause, the boss tells the viewer what she's going to do by shaming her, blaming her, putting her down, mocking her in front of her coworkers, and she's going to humiliate her. And then the ripple effects of the way that the boss ineffectively expresses her fears to the employee. And then what happens to the other team members that are witnessing this experience. And then it comes back to the boss, and she says, or she can do things different and she can help her fix the mistake that she made. So, and it's a very short 2 minute preview of a conflict that occurs in the workplace and how the boss can handle it in a way that is really what instability is about. And then the other side of it, which is what we teach.
It's a very nice summary. What I found interesting about this film is two things. Number one, there was a pause. So the pause allowed the boss to think about the options she has to answer and respond to this mistake. So on one hand, she could say, oh, I can do all of those things and it will have a ripple effect, a negative effect, not only on the employee, but everybody around that employee. Some people will shut down. Some people will become more aggressive, even when they talk to their customers and to each other. Or I can respond a different way, which is to let her know it's okay. We can fix the problem together with the mistake. And that's what we want. We want people to feel safe to, first of all, to share that there's a mistake. And we want to feel safe that we're not alone in that message, in that situation when we make a mistake. In reality, we don't have a pause. So we automatically will respond to the mistake, depends on the emotions that we feel. And I think sometimes, as I was listening to the panel, and there were a lot of great people on the panel, people from FBI, people from Walmart, people from Johnson and Johnson. There was a person from Penske, one of my people who attended and who she took the training on emotional connection. They were all talking about how the leader, the manager, has the power and has the influence on what people feel, experience at work, and the decisions that they have to make in order to select the right people or to make people accountable for their behavior, right? Whether it is the manager or the employee, each individual needs to behave, so to speak, civil at work, and how it is important for us to do that. And as I was listening, what came to my mind is that we're still thinking individual. And that's a problem for me, because if we understand the attachment theory, the humanistic theory, and systems theory, they're all really talking about the same thing, is we impact each other and we respond in relationships with others. So when we have a secure relationship with our boss or with our employees and our team members, we will respond in a more supportive way. Just like the manager in the film, the second option, she said, oh, we can support this person. We can fix the mistake together. Well, that automatic response only could happen if people have a secure relationship, secure attached relationship, where they feel they can be there for each other, where they have the safety to talk about the difficult topics, and where they can be accessible, responsive, and engaged, so they can share the emotions that happen for them and feel supported and not alone. Could happen when there's a security in the relationship. When there is no security in the relationship, all the signs that shows us is that the amygdala, the emotional part of the brain, will trigger the response, which is, oh my gosh, how can you do that? Why did you make a mistake? So the shaming, criticizing, judging will come automatically, because in that moment, people get triggered and they don't know how to slow things down. So they will respond, or because it's an alarm of disconnection. So when they get triggered, there's a disconnection happens. And then they become either pursuing, which is aggressively attacking the person, or they might just walk by and shut down and not talk to the person.
Yeah, I just want to go back to what you said at the beginning of the video is, well, this is like the very first step in your process, which is to use that slow motion camera and to pause before the conflict even occurs. And I think that the self-awareness that could bring them what they need in order to pause at that moment prior to the conflict occurring, which I think is very, very important. In the video, she pauses as soon as she hears that there's a mistake, like you were saying, right before the issue takes place. So this is what's so beautiful about the process is the first step that says we need to incorporate the slow motion camera to slow everything down. We really are only able to do that when we become aware of how we react to the certain triggers that we experience and what our triggers are. And that's what I love so much about the process too, is incivility is so common. It is so common. And I think it is very accepted by society, because this is just how everybody responds. This is just how everybody has because they don't have the tools, they don't have the emotionally connected process that you created to learn how to effectively express themselves. So they do go around and create unknowingly incivility in the workplace without even knowing that they can have that moment to pause and use your slow motion camera to slow the situation down and have the chance to respond in a way that's effective in creating that safe emotional environment in the workplace.
It's very hard. It's very hard to slow things down when you get triggered. And like you said, by continually practicing the tools and recognizing, oh, I just got triggered, and let me just slow it down. Let me tune in. What's happening with me? I mean, obviously, the boss, when she said I could shame her, could criticize her, I could judge her, the boss probably feels shamed and feels like scared that she would be criticized. How is her boss is going to respond to that mistake? So remember a few, I think, podcasts before you said that when people respond to the trigger, it's actually what they feel themselves, right?
Yeah,
They feel ashamed that the employee made a mistake, so they will shame that person, or they feel scared that they will be shamed and they will do that to the other person, which is
yeah,
actually giving us a sense that about the relationship again. So the way the boss responds is actually represents on what their boss and how they are secure in their relationship with their boss. So it has a ripple effect.
yeah. But then when the boss does share in an ineffective way with the employee, it shows the ripple effect of that employee taking it into her personal life outside of the workplace and then adding so much more stress to her life because she cannot sleep at night. And then the other employee is now in an argument with their significant other because of the stress that they experienced. So it's like adding fuel to a jetpack, but we're not adding fuel to a jetpack when we're dealing with conflicts in the workplace. And it's like adding water to a jetpack.
Well, you just described the negative cycle, Paulina. This is
Yeah,
what's going on. So when people are triggered, their raw spots get hit, and then they feel emotion. And instead of slowing things down and recognizing what fears they have and what do they need to feel safe and connected in that moment, what they do in the negative cycle, they have automatic thoughts and then protective behavior. And that protective behavior triggers the other person. So, and
yeah,
then it hits their raw spot, emotions get hit, their automatic thoughts, and then protective behavior. And so it goes in, and so when they bring their stress home, their negative cycle continues to impact their relationship and have that ripple effect because they still don't understand what's happening for them, that they got disconnected. Their fear is that, oh my gosh, my boss is going to fire me, or their fear is, oh, again, I'm not good enough. And then they're using the protective behavior, either complain or criticize at their partner, or they shut down and feel more alone and isolated. And this is what Jaak Panksepp talked about with neuroscience. He said that when we feel disconnected, there's a primal panic that happens in our brain. And that primal panic alarms the amygdala, which hijacks the prefrontal cortex, and we do one thing, one of two things. We either pursue the connection or we withdraw to
which
preserve.
is like the fight or flight.
Exactly. Fight or flight
Yeah.
response. Exactly. Yes. So in those behaviors, you can right away identify who is a pursuer and who is a withdrawer in that relationship. And this is a good indicator for people who are listening to this podcast to recognize when the negative cycles are starting. So as soon as people hear those behaviors or notice those behaviors. Somebody's complaining, criticizing, shaming, lecturing. Those are behaviors of a negative cycle. Those are the red flags of the negative cycle. And if people avoid and withdraw, disconnect, that is another indicator of the negative cycle.
I remember learning about this also in the book. I had talked about where you're in like that ready, set position, and then the person just never says go. And so you're just like in that position. It also said that we have the natural fight and flight response because it's ingrained for our survival on a physical level. But I think this is where the missing link was in all these years that we didn't learn about the importance of emotional connection because we are feeling beings. We are emotional beings. We have the same survival need on an emotional level. So I think it's important to distinguish between that because that fight or flight response activates in both situations. You have the fight and fight response that is the mode in the physical sense where you don't feel that physically safe. And then you have that same fight or flight, which is what we call pursue or withdraw response in an emotional sense. And because I think also people don't, they think like, oh, I have a safe environment. They don't correlate the it's not a safe environment to the emotional unsafe experience that they're having at work. They correlate like, oh no, I have a safe, like physically safe environment at work. But you actually are impacted the same, if not more, in your body and in your mind when you have an emotionally unsafe environment, as though you're in a physically unsafe environment as well.
Absolutely. You said it so nicely. I like the distinction. You think it's physical safety, but
Mhm.
it is really a lot of has to do with emotional safety. Because if we are in that fight or flight response, we are not able to really collaborate together or engage in our work or focus in our work. We are going to be not motivated to do our work. We're going to be stuck. And that's what is so interesting about this neuroscience and the attachment theory. Like you said, humans beings are wired for connection. It is part of our survival code. When people are disconnected from their attachment figures, our bosses or our team members, these are attachment figures. We depend on these people. So when the brain senses that disconnection, it is like a tiger coming at us. At that moment, we are panicked for our survival in that moment. So the more secure relationship you have, then we will get less triggered. The more insecure relationship you have will get more triggered. That is why it is important to recognize that behaviors are not about people want to be incivil or people want to be jerks or they want to react like this. Incivility is the response to the insecurity in the relationship.
Yeah, and as you were saying about the tigers, I was thinking even the trainers that train the tigers, they have a secure relationship with the
I
tigers.
don't know about that.
They're not running
Well,
for
tigers still be
the
tigers, right?
yes, because we're different, obviously, than a tiger, but it's like the people who I see that go diving with the sharks and can just like redirect them with their hand. It's almost like you have that same power when you have the process, the emotionally connected process, and you understand how you respond in triggers. When you get triggered, you have awareness of what your automatic protective thoughts and behaviors are. You can easily de-escalate and redirect, right? I mean, you're de-escalating connecting and then you're redirecting because once you get connected, you can redirect to solving whatever issue that's going on. Because there's million, that's what I think is important to say too, right? It's like we're not saying, okay, you need to do this conflict a certain way and now you're not going to get anything done because you're spending time talking about your feelings, talking about your emotions. No, we are still taking that moment to emotionally connect and then repair the conflict or repair the injury if there was one. And then you can simply redirect that energy to resolving whatever work issue needed to be resolved or whatever tasks need to be completed. And that's also why the workplace where the teams are emotionally connected, they thrive. That is why we see an increase in sales and productivity, and you see in team bonding and connection because they have now a thriving environment. So you're actually the time that's spent wasted and hours of inproductivity because an employee could feel that their has this incivility so they don't feel balanced enough to be able to produce the results, and all that time wasted is saved because now they feel connected and they can turn around and now be productive and significantly increase the sales and the success of the company.
Yes, I agree. The word that stuck with me when you were talking earlier is flexibility. That when teams are have the process that they can go back to and they have tools, like you said, it becomes a regular scheduled flight. So we have a little disconnect, but we also feel safe and we have a process by which we can have these conversations where we can repair that connection. None of the people who learned the process are expected to do perfect every time. They still get disconnected, they still get triggered, but the time between the disconnection and connection reduces. We talked about it with Chip. He was saying that at Southern California Edison, they did this calculations, figured out that when time is reduced from conflict to reconnection, that is a win for the company because people become more productive, collaborative, engaged, and can actually focus on the company instead of focusing on how they should protect themselves. Right? So
Absolutely.
flexibility is the key. Flexibility, people become supportive and flexible when they feel connected.
I also think that they become significantly more responsive, even if they get disconnected. I think that's important too, is that they have the ability to hold if they do get disconnected. When you have a securely attached relationship in the workplace, then you can get disconnected. And if you don't have that moment necessarily at the time that it happens to express the disconnection that occurred, you have an easier time holding on to it to a time that can be discussed about the disconnection and continuing to be responsive and engaged at work because you have a securely attached relationship.
Yes, and because you have the process that we will talk about it, it's no longer an urgent issue. I love what you're saying. That is absolutely correct. You can hold that space a little bit longer. You can put that on a shelf and say, okay, we're going to talk about it. I know that that time will be allocated to discussing our relationship.
What you said was really important was people hold on to a lot of issues that bother them and they hold
Yes.
on to a lot of feelings and they hold on to a lot of injuries that occur in the workplace.
Then it causes them to be more incivil,
Right, and less productive. They
less
significantly less
productive.
productive because it's hijacking their prefrontal cortex. And so what we're saying is the strength and the ability to hold on to something and be responsive and engaged and productive, that's the shift too that I think is very, very important in the workplace. Because, yeah, just like you said, things are going to happen, mistakes are going to be made. You're going to step on each other's toes. You're going to have things that are said or done, or you're going to do things or say things that are going to hurt other people in the workplace. And we can't always expect that every single conflict is going to be reconnected at the moment that it occurs.
Mm.
But we can expect from the process that you'll be able to hold on to it and continue to be productive, responsive, and engaged until the moment where you'll be able to speak about it and then be even more significantly productive, responsive, and engaged.
But
Even though
the
you have that conflict, you'll still say, I love my work. I love my job. I love coming here. I want to support the company because you have that secure attachment.
Exactly. And what is the person is saying really? When they have a secure attachment, they feel valued in the workplace. They feel in that relationship. They feel cared for. They feel that no, they matter to the boss or to the team members, and vice versa. The boss feels that the team members care about the boss and they care about the company. Thinking about the back to the film, the boss can still be triggered, but what in the process, I think what boss and all the people who learn the process learn to say is to make implicit explicit. What does that mean? It means that I am triggered. Yes, of course, I get scared that we made a mistake, but I still care about you. I still want to work with you, even though you made a mistake. When we respond in a triggering way and we don't make that explicit, we start to give a message that I'm disappointed somehow, I'm disapproving you, and I don't like you, I don't care about you. And when we do the process, we correct the message. That's why through the whole process, our goal is to create a new emotional experience with the message is, you are important to me. I do care about you, and you matter to me. And I'm right here. You're not alone, even though you made a mistake.
I want to just bring it back to also the importance of teaching and training the team in the workplace about this process and the significance. I was thinking back to when I was working at the athletic clothing company, and I won't say any names just out of respect for the company. And it was really interesting. I had spent a good 2 weeks in training on all these policies on the computer. They had me just come in to train for the 2 weeks and clock in to do this training. And not one training session was about relationships. Not one training session was about conflicts that we're experiencing or conflicts that could come up, or if you do have a conflict, what should you do? And sure enough, about 3 weeks into working at the store, there was a conflict. Luckily, I had the tools to help de-escalate the situation, but I ended up leaving the job because well, partly because it was like a very good experiment to see how their workplace environment, is how it is created, but also to see that this is a really huge issue in the workplace. This is why this process is the first, best, and different, other than any other training process there is, because organizations need this. This is not like, oh, should we? Shouldn't we? No, this is you need this process 100% of the time, 100% guaranteed it's going to change the way your team works. So I think it's important to know that this process is very effective in not only resolving conflicts, not only building resilience, building team productivity, increasing team productivity, and also completely eliminating and decreasing incivility at the workplace, but it's also should be part of the onboarding training program for every single team member in your organization.
I agree, 100%. And because it gives up language, it gives people the common language to, because we do impact each other, relationships are very important, and that is your client. Managers should need to pay attention to the relationship, not individual. And retention is very, very important for companies. It's very expensive to constantly hire people, fire people, change people. They lose productivity because there's a learning curve to the products and to the process. So it is way better to keep the people and help them to repair relationships.
Every single business is in the business of relationships. And every single person in this world is in the business of relationships. So the greatest and most valuable skill you can teach your team is how to communicate using the language of emotions and using the emotionally connected process. Thank you very much for watching, for listening to the Leader in You podcast. Again, my name is Paulina, and I'm here with Dr. Lola, and we're so excited to bring all different topics every single week to take your perspective and open up to the idea of how much your life and the life of your employees can change with just this. I wouldn't say simple, but we've made it into a simple process, but very useful technique. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Paulina. Thank you,
Yes.
everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone, for listening. It's a joy to share these podcasts with you. Be sure to check out our previous podcasts and subscribe to join us at our next podcast of The Leader in You, brought to you by EmC Leaders, taking care of the teams you care about. Until then, be well and be focused on your relationships. We'll see you soon.